нашу колегу з Ізраїлю Гілу Офер. Вона є членом правління Європейської федерації психоаналітичної психотерапії, координатор східноєвропейських країн-членів цієї організації, редактор огляду психоаналітичної психотерапії ЄФПП, екс-голова секції групової психоаналітичної психотерапії ЄФПП, клінічний психолог, тренінговий психоаналітик та груповий аналітик, доктор філософії, співзасновник та колишній президент Тель-Авівського Інсититуту сучасного психоаналізу та член-засновник Ізраїльського Інсититуту групового аналізу. Лектор і супервізор у програмі психоаналітичної психотерапії в Тель-Авівському університеті. Працює на факультеті цього університету, ведуча освітньої програми з групового впливу воду, конфлікти та примирення в групах та суспільстві, виданою у 2017 році. І її пленарна доповідь, тема називається «Травма, братів та сестер. Закон матері. Його вплив на любов і ненависть між братами та сестрами та у суспільстві». Гіла, я запрошую вас до доповіді і прошу.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is our second day of this wonderful conference organized by the APPU. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank Taras and the committee of the conference for inviting me and having me give this plenary lecture. And I will go directly then to my lecture. Let me start with a poem. I want to say, let me start with a poem from Antigona. I'd never done it for children of my own, not as their mother, nor for a dead husband lying in decay. No, not in defiance of citizens. What law do I appeal to claiming this? If my husband died, there would be another one. And if I were to lose a child of mine, I'd have another with some other man. But since my father and my mother too are hidden away in Hades' house, I'll never have another living brother. A poem by Antigona by Sophocles, verses 1018, 1025. Antigona is torn between her love for her brother who deserves burial and his being an enemy who must be treated as one. She chooses to openly side with her brother and bury him, meaning that she too will die, as in doing so, she violates the law of Creon the king. So I want to say something to comment that this is a lecture about the importance of brotherhood, siblings, which was neglected in the past in the psychoanalytic theory. And I go to the text. Juliet Mitchell noticed years ago the prominent lack of engagement with the issue of siblings in psychoanalysis and started to refer to this in her writing. She conceptualized lateral relations between siblings along an autonomous horizontal axis, but this axis interacts with the vertical parent-child axis. Everyone who engages in group analysis is in need of this material, but in psychoanalysis too, in individual treatment, there is no analysis without the appearance of prominent elements related to siblings, whether younger brothers, twins, older brothers, or being a single child. In current Hebrew slang, and also in the USA, youngsters call each other bra or sis. The question is, Where is this coming from? Possibly from the importance of siblings issue. It is important to know that although psychoanalysis has indeed seldom referred to the issue of siblings, the Bible, as well as Greek and Shakespearean tragedies, have dealt abundantly with the issue. Thinking of this topic, I'm flooded with multitude of associations, both personal. I have 3 brothers and I am a mother of 2, and professionally as an analyst of individuals and groups in which sibling transferences are very conspicuous. Proper disclosure. I cannot think of anything more blissful than seeing my 2 sons so different from each other, sometimes fighting too, being such good friends. And I'm sure there are many in the audience who feel the same. Professionally, we all tend to refer to the dynamics of brothers and sisters as stemming from the Oedipal triangle. But don't we miss an enormous amount of transferences if we disregard the transferences related to siblings, sisters, and brothers? In order to avoid drowning the audience with deluge of associations, I will focus on several things. First, the location and focus of the law of mother as I see it. Then, examples of the absence of the law of mother in the Bible. 3, a clinical treatment of a complex case of the law of the mother. And 4, the significance of the law of the mother in society in general. And I want to comment on this because this is especially important for our discussion yesterday, how in society the law of the mother exerts itself. Back to the text. In the essay, From Sibling Trauma to the Law of the Mother, Mitchell emphasizes that it is not only the siblings who are absent from psychoanalysis, the mother is too. One can say that the mother, since Melanie Klein, is not so much absent, but she is present as an object for the child that becomes an inner object, but not as a subject. Mitchell adds a very important role for the mother, a mother that connects to reality in general and mainly to social reality. The law of the mother is related to this. If the mother doesn't lay down the law of the mother, she causes division, denial, and dissociation from the social aspect. In similar fashion, psychoanalysis has recreated this situation when it ignored the issue of siblings and the law of the mother, and thus there are few direct references to siblings in theory and case descriptions. We also cannot overestimate the fact that among brothers in psychoanalysis, there wasn't always mutual love and respect. For example, the cruel hiding of Ferentz's papers by Ernest Jones for decades. This is only one example of a symbolic murder of a brother. I argue that part of the year-long avoidance of the issue of siblings in psychoanalysis is related to one-person psychology. In this respect, group analysis and relational psychoanalysis, with their emphasis on the shared construction of the unconscious and treatment processes, have changed the picture to a large degree. But the issue of siblings remains backstage, along with the law of the mother. I wish once more to summarize the law as I read it in the essay. The law of the mother originates as a source of authority that sharply distinguishes between the mother and the toddler. The toddler is not identical to the mother. It cannot give birth to children. This is the vertical axis that enables a transition to the horizontal axis, which is also the social axis. The law of the mother organizes the sibling trauma and enables the infant to grow into the social. It forbids the infant from murdering its sibling and similarly forbids sexuality between siblings. This law is rooted in the motherly attitude of love to each child. Each child is special and equivalent, and this implies that each child is unique and equal at the same time. This is also the law that consecrates differences between parents and infants, and it precedes the law of the father, which is related to the Oedipal complex. Eventually, this law enables coping with the need to be special and unique. Everyone is similar to everyone else, only in a partial sense, and with the need for intimacy and trust. It is a law, and therefore it is located in the unconscious, as well as the law of the father. The vertical axis, just a comment, I hope everybody knows what is the law of the father. It was said, I think Lacan brought it in these words, law of the father, which the father which comes between mother and child and avoids symbiosis. But we are dealing with the law of the mother here. Back to my lecture. The vertical axis is indirectly reminiscent of Benjamin's essay, Father and Daughter, Identification with the Difference. In this essay, Benjamin indeed refers first and foremost to fathers and daughters, describing the need for identificatory love, complete identification with the father or the mother, before maturation and passage into the Oedipal stage of object love, of heterosexual love. In other words, both male and female infants must feel that they are exactly like the mother in order to develop and attain the ability to love the other. Mitchell too argues that full identification with the mother is happening and necessary as a first stage before the understanding that the infant is different from the mother, and before the transition to acceptance of the sibling and the law of the mother on the horizontal axis. Ogden too refers to this pre-Oedipal stage in his essay about the Oedipal transitions in female development. He refers to the importance of the pre-Oedipal stage, but conceptualizes it through Oedipal thinking and identification of the mother with her father, and not through the direct link of the mother with the lineage of motherhood. Interestingly, the two essays I mentioned here attempted to deal with female development. Mitchell is a renowned feminist, and the conceptualization of the law of the mother as preserving the uniqueness of each sibling along with the push in a social and sharing direction is anchored, I believe, in her thinking as a mother, philosopher, and feminist. But when numerous feminists attacked psychoanalysis, she herself argued that psychoanalysis doesn't support the patriarchal society. Rather, it reflects such a society in depth and with courage. Out of this feminist thinking, she added the law of the mother as a necessary pillar of her theory alongside the law of the father. And in this, she added to psychoanalysis another important strain of feminism, along with other feminists such as Chodorow, Benjamin, Shasgesh-Miguel, Kristeva, and others. She also anchors the mother not only as an object, as Benjamin argued, but also as a subject with authority, intentions, and desires of her own. a comment. I'm sure that all women here would agree to this. Back to the text. The application of the law of the mother is a gradual process of negotiation in which the infant discovers and creates the social aspect. This description is reminiscent of the transitional space that Winnicott wrote about. This process carries the risk of losing uniqueness and omnipotence if it is carried out in a sharp and unenabling manner. However, I think that the process of accepting the law of the mother among siblings is identical to that described by Winnicott in his essay, The Use of the Object and Relating Through Identification. Winnicott describes the process occurring between mother and baby, and I argue that this process also takes place among siblings due to the law of the mother. It is a process of concurrent love and hate in which one subject sibling must discover the other sibling one through his description and the ability of the other, in this case the sibling, not to be destroyed by the hate of the brother. Thus, the destruction of the sibling object removes him from the omnipotent control of the subject sibling. The sibling object develops an autonomy and life of its own because it survives and contributes to its own subjectivity. This is a mutual process, of course, between two siblings, such as I have seen among my children when they were little, and to an extent today as well, when they would get into serious fights and struggle with each other and finally come out of the process hugging and loving each other. To quote Winnicott, this is a position that can be arrived by the individual in early stages of emotional growth only through the actual survival of cathected objects that are at the same time in process of becoming destroyed because real, becoming real because destroyed. I want to play around a little with the idea of the law of the mother, and for this purpose, I'll focus on cases in which I presume that the absence of the mother prevented the law of the mother from passing on to the siblings. While psychoanalysis ignored the law of the mother and the sibling trauma, the Bible certainly did not. There are numerous sibling stories to be found within it. And here I'll mention two cases in which it seems that the law of the mother wasn't kept. In the first case, one brother murders the other. And in the second case, a brother has sex with his sister. In both cases, the mother is not mentioned, and one can conclude that the law of the mother wasn't put into practice. The results are disastrous in both cases. The case of Cain and Abel is the well-known mythical archetypal story. In short, Cain is a farmer and Abel is a shepherd. They both submit their offerings to the Lord, who accepts Abel's but rejects Cain's. Cain is devoured by jealousy and kills Abel. In this story, the mother, Eve, is mentioned only at their birth. Afterwards, she is not mentioned at all. She is not an authority figure, and the absence of a mother emphasizes the Lord's discriminatory attitude toward the true brothers. The law of the mother, which guarantees the brothers' difference and separateness, but also make possible their joining, uniqueness versus sharing, is not enacted and the murder is committed.
Deci, am și dorat un coleț.
Ce nume, doamnă?
Nu un cașu, e un copac.
Sorry?
Da.
Is this okay? Is it okay? Okay, 1 minute, please. Okay. The story of Amnon and Tamar. Amnon, I also wanted to say, by the way, that Henry Abramovitz, I want to quote him, quotes numerous questions about Cain and Abel from the book written by Noam Zion on the origins of human violence, an introduction to Midrash Haggadah, the story of Cain and Abel. So he writes, including whether Cain really intended to kill Abel. This was the first death in the Bible, and it is unclear whether Cain even knew that what death is. The story of Amnon and Tamar. Amnon desires his half-sister and attempts to seduce her. When he fails to do so, he pretends to be ill and asks his father, King David, to send Tamar to him in order to prepare delicacies for him and feed him. David orders her to do so, and when she obeys, Amnon rapes her. After the rape, his passion turns into hatred, and he throws her out of his room. David hears of this and angry at Amnon, but doesn't punish him. He is killed 2 years later by Absalom, Tamar's brother. Tamar herself is not mentioned anymore and apparently never recovered from the affair. As in the story of Cain and Abel, here too the absence of a mother stands out. The father, David, thoughtlessly assists the act and later doesn't punish Amnon and certainly doesn't support Tamar. The absence of the mother also signifies the absence of the law that forbids incest among siblings and the absence of the law that forbids murder of siblings. I will now deal with cases in which the mother herself experienced a trauma that prevented her from applying the law of the mother, and as a consequence, a distorted form of the law of the mother prevailed among her children. Dana has been in analysis for several years. Both of her parents are Holocaust survivors. The father lived among the partisans, and the mother is the only one of her family who survived when she managed to escape the death march. Both parents and two older brothers were killed during the march. Dana's brother was born in 1947, 2 years after the end of the war of the Shoah, while Dana's mother was apparently under the influence of the war and death. Dana herself is 4 years younger. The mother appears to be depressed, withdrawn woman, surrounded by a wall and impossible to communicate with. Dana's brother had no boundaries and was kicked out of school daily. He was aggressive and couldn't adjust to any framework. His parents had no idea how to contain him or control him. The only way to communicate with him was through the father, through strict discipline and beatings. At a young age, he was sent to kibbutz, where he grew up until he left for the army. Dana herself was a good girl, disciplined, and doesn't need anything. However, when she was away from home with friends, she had to go back home every couple of hours in order to make sure that her mother was okay. She always said that the only thing that her mother knew how to do was to provide a warm meal and a clean house. And Dana grew to be a child, maiden, woman, who knows how to serve others in her profession too, filled with guilt for the beating suffered by her brothers and for his expulsion from home. Dana's brother became a failed entrepreneur who borrows money from friends and loses it. He lives in a lavish apartment, but rarely manages to get and pay the alimony to his ex-wife. At the same time, Dana works for a living, providing for herself as well as her husband. When Dana was 50 years old, her mother took ill and wrote a will, while she still lived, leaving the apartment to both children. Dana immediately and unthinkingly relinquished her share of the apartment in favor of her brother. And this means like $500,000 giving away. When I asked her to reflect on why she did so, she pounced on me in great anger, saying that other than her, there is no one to take care of her brother, and that otherwise he would be homeless. And she says to me, "Would you desert your brother?" She said, "I won't detail the process we went through, but it goes without saying that the brother sold the apartment after the mother passed away and never moved into it. 2 years later, not a penny was left from the proceeds." The story of Dana and her brother can be explained from various angles, but it is also possible to say that since Dana's mother was absent as a mother to both siblings, this absence prevented the law of the mother from being fully internalized. That is, the mother gives birth to children and the siblings have equal standing in the social order, but separate. Dana was left with the need to stand in for the mother in order to safeguard the brother's life and uniqueness. He didn't become part of the social order, and she couldn't be there as a sister, but only as an alternative mother. And if she hadn't given him the apartment, it meant abandoning him to die, as she saw it. Karen is another case. Her mother, also an Auschwitz survivor, grew up without a mother, and her entire family was destroyed in the Holocaust. The mother used Karen as a twin in complete symbiosis in order to satisfy her own needs. But when Karen's younger brother was born, 3 years after her, he contracted a grave illness, and the mother, who was unable to take care of both children, sent Karen to live with her cousin for several months. After the brother recovered his health, Karen returned and needed to take her place again, still broken due to the harsh separation from her mother. The feeling that the mother prefers her brother unless she is symbiotic with the mother became stronger. Today, Karen is functional in her profession and successful, while her brother has been trying to establish a freelance business for years and is getting into deeper and deeper financial trouble. When the mother died, Karen's brother asked Karen to give up a significant part of the inheritance for him. Karen agreed immediately. Here too, when I asked her why and if she can explain this, she grew angry at me and said, I quote, "Would you have deserted your brother? He could have collapsed without this," end of quote. From her point of view, not giving him the money was murdering him. I argued that the mother was unable to function as a mother with motherly authority. Instead, she turned Karen into her clone and passed on to Karen and her brother a distorted version of the law of the mother. You, Karen, must be a mother to your brother. You are not his sibling, you are his mother. In other words, the vertical axis that distinguishes mother from daughter wasn't preserved here. Neither was the horizontal axis, which preserves siblinghood in a manner that allows each sibling to be unique along with social responsibility and trust. A symbiotic mother or an absent one cannot pass on the motherly attitude and therefore cannot pass the law of the mother in its entirety. In both cases, the brother, as well as the sister, were infected by the fact that the law of the mother was not transmitted and introjected by them. It must also be that some more factors, like gender differences, were acting in both cases and contributed to the partial functioning of the brother and sister, taking role of caretaker or life server. And a comment to this, of course, there are many factors overlapping in these stories, but I wanted to show how the absence of the law of the mother had an impact on their relationship while they are alive and also after the mother is dead. Now I want to take a look at society as a whole. Mitchell emphasizes that the law of the mother comes with the transition from omnipotent narcissism to the social child, more or less at the age of 2.5 years. If it doesn't occur, then sibling murder or incest, whether symbolic or physical, may take place. Sibling murders are prominent in mobster movies such as The Godfather. There, the law of the father reigns and the mother is absent. And we see how the younger brother murders his brother after he didn't comply assiduously with the law of the father. We see entire societies in coping with their identity to do so from a narcissistic, omnipotent place in order to differentiate them from the other, but only through mass murder or rape. An example or two. Hitler had to be different from others, from other brothers, by killing millions of others, Jews, homosexuals, cripples. The struggle between various branches of Islam, which continues to this day with ISIS being its apex, leads to murder of everyone who is suspected of being an other and doesn't obey the law of being perfectly identical. In Burma, the horrifying massacre of the Rohingya and things that happens also, yes, in Burma. It's killing of hundreds of thousands of people. Also things that happen in my own country, such as deporting refugees, separation of Ethiopian Jews in ultra-Orthodox schools, and more. All of these are societies that are organized around the law of the father and not around the law of the mother as defined by Mitchell. A comment here is that I think that you have this problem between Ukraine and Russia, but also in Eastern Europe, now the wars between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and many more. What happened in Yugoslavia, older Yugoslavia, that was broken into so many countries and by war, by killings. This was the only way of being able to bring forth the identification of a special nation, of a specific nation. It is no wonder that figures such as Michelle Obama are so popular. Searching for mothers can bring the law of the mother. And not only Michelle Obama, these days is the new vice president in the United States. Looking at what happens at New Zealand, for example, where the female prime minister manages so well the corona, the pandemic situation. And I go back to my presentation. We see that entire societies are defined by the law of the father in a way that demonstrates the absence of the law of the mother, and also characterizes the massification defense that is, as it is defined by Hopper, which is we are all the same and identical in our thinking, or alternatively, a majority that hides behind the aggregation defense, which is each of us to his own, and this prevents healthy siblinghood. In conclusion, the influence of feminism on psychoanalytical theory has enriched it and added numerous areas that are not related only to the development of girls. The question is, are the sibling trauma and the law of the mother theoretical concepts that must be developed and treated in death? Some will argue that previous theories cover the development of the child at this stage, and therefore it is doubtful if these concepts are required. I argue that according to what I have said here, that Mitchell's innovations, including the vertical axis of the mother and the horizontal axis in psychoanalytical theory and group analysis, are emphases that we need. They are important to understanding broad intrapersonal, interpersonal, and social processes. Without these concepts, we miss additional significant aspects that can help us understand normal processes and cope with destructive ones. Thank you.
Дякую за таку дуже цікаву та блискучу доповідь. И у нас есть несколько вопросов. У нас есть еще времени, какое-то время у нас еще есть, и вот задали вопросы уже по ходу лекции, доклада вашего. Первый вопрос Светлана Шульц-Климишина. Как закон матери работает, либо не работает в отношениях между однояйцевыми близнецами? Играет ли роль род женский или мужской? Спасибо.
Does it affect the gender of the sibling? Or does she mean, or do you mean that it is different for boys and girls?
Нет, тут вопрос, может быть, Светлана сама прояснит. Тут написано, что работает или не работает в отношениях между однояйцевыми близнецами. Как закон работает матери?
Gila, she means twins coming from one egg cell.
Uh-huh. Okay. When you say, does it affect the gender? I don't know. I mean, from birth, I don't think so. But I think that the examples that I brought, if I look at them, the murder and the incest is done by boys, and the taking care is done by girls. We have to think about it, whether gender plays a role here also.
Спасибо. И вопрос есть от Тарасовой Надежды. Может ли радикальная ветка феминизма, смена пола, операции по удалению груди и так далее, как-то также быть следствием отсутствия закона матери? Эти вопросы есть в чате общем.
It goes both directions, transgender, you mean transsexual, it goes both direction. Women change into men and men change into. I don't automatically connect it to this, but we have to think about it. I don't automatically connect it, but maybe some people here can say what they think about it. Can we open it for discussion?
Да, да, конечно. Просто эти вопросы были заданы, поэтому я их озвучила. А пространство для обсуждения у нас еще небольшое, но есть. Пожалуйста. Кто хочет высказаться? Может быть, я скажу, что для меня это чрезвычайно интересный доклад, интересный взгляд такой вот. Я не знакома с работой Митчелл, вот о ком вы упоминаете. Мне интересно прочитать ее, да, и ваш доклад рождает очень много каких-то размышлений, мыслей, вопросы пока еще не сформулированы, но размышлений очень много. Нужно какое-то действительно пространство для того, чтобы как-то подумать об этом, но чрезвычайно интересно. Спасибо.
Well, radical feminism and the issues of transgender, I want to say that there are many other factors that come into it, like technology, like medical technology. It's without the medical technology, we wouldn't see this phenomena so often. Like opening our minds to new things, to new technology, to the issue of gender in general, not only to the mother, to the law of the mother. The whole way we look at gender is different. The whole way we look at sexuality is different today. It's more open, at least in some societies, not in all societies.
У меня есть вопрос, я попытаюсь его сформулировать. Вот закон матери – это когда, ну, то есть, наоборот, когда закон отца – это когда дети пытаются идентифицировать себя, и они борются между собой. Это когда, ну, вот вы навели примеры, когда война, это попытка автономии. Тогда закон матери, то есть мать как бы запрещает автономию детей. Я правильно поняла? Она о том, чтобы дети заботились друг о друге.
Возможно.
If I understand the translation, this is not what I said when I talked about the law of the mother and the law of the father. So maybe let me repeat it in a few words. The law of the father distinguishes between parents, between mother and children, so that there will not be symbiosis between the mother and the child. This is the law of the father. It separates the mother and the child. There shouldn't be symbiosis between the mother and the child. The law of the mother is toward siblings and to differentiate between them, but to tell them that each of them is unique, but they are different. And it's coming from love, and it's entering them into society so as to prevent murder. Murder comes when you think that you're not unique, so you want to find yourself as the only one, so you murder the other. And it prevents incest, because incest means that we are all the same. We can do whatever we want. There is no male and female. There is no me and you. We are the same. We can do sex. There is incest. This is the law of the mother. It enters the siblings into society, into laws of society. This is the law of the mother.
Але тут я як той, хто ж слідкує за часом, повинна, на превеликий жаль, зупинити нашу дискусію маленьку і подякувати, Гіла, вам за цей дійсно блискучий доповідь і цікаві ідеї.
Thank you.
Так. І я повинна передати слово нашому наступному доповідачу.